The year is 1918. In the face of surrender, Kaiser Wilhelm II abdicates and the German Empire is dissolved. The people set up a provisional government called the Weimar Republic, which is the democratic government. On November 11th, Germany surrenders, ending World War I. In the Treaty of Versailles, amongst other things, the Rhineland is demilitarized and occupied by the French, the British, and the Americans. It was here that the story of the Bottleneck Freestate took place. The story starts in the Rhine River, right here, in between the cities of Wiesbaden and Koblenz. The plan was for the French and the Americans to occupy all the land 17.5 miles from these two cities. However, this is not what happened. Instead, there were two occupation zones in circles, with a radius of 17.5 miles from the cities of Wiesbaden and Koblenz. The French occupied the Wiesbaden circle, and the Americans occupied the Koblenz circle. This left an unoccupied area in the shape of a bottleneck in between the occupation zones, with the thinnest point being less than 1 mile long. This mistake may seem funny to some people, but it almost caused a lot of Germans to die. Because the bottleneck was so thin, there were no train tracks running through the bottleneck, instead running in and out of the American and French occupation zones. Because of this, the bottleneck couldn't supply itself, and the Weimar Republic couldn't supply the bottleneck because the French and the Americans wouldn't let any supplies leave their occupation zones. In order to get food and supplies into the bottleneck, the Weimar Republic would have to send it by horse and buggy on dirt roads, which was very slow and inefficient. To make light in this horrible situation, the inhabitants of the bottleneck began referring to themselves as the Bottleneck Freestate because they were so disconnected from the rest of Germany. One way the people of the bottleneck survived was by stealing things off of boats and ships that were sailing down the Rhine River. Usually, they would only steal off of boats heading towards Italy, which carried supplies and reparation payments. Because Britain and the Allies felt bad for cheating Italy out of some of the land they promised, they had Germany pay reparations to Italy, even though Italy did nothing to help defeat Germany, only Austria-Hungary. To put it simply, the reparations towards Italy were more of a suggestion. Many times, the crews on the boats and ships would help offload the supplies to the bottleneck to spite the Italians and the Allies. Ironically, the Bottleneck Freestate was known for producing wine, beer, and schnapps, and basically nothing else. So the ship crews could use the excuse, "We got drunk, and while we were drinking, the locals looted our ship." To prevent this from happening again, the French set up flashlight beacons across the river to make sure no one would loot the ships. This made German children have the urge to show their hatred for the French and go into the light of the beacons and do something I will not speak of. Angry, the French crossed the river. The British and the American governments condemned this action and declared that French should have more honor when occupying the Rhine. The absence of Austria-Hungary left a power vacuum only a stable Germany could fill. The Allies knew this, so they allowed the Weimar Republic to strike at a French force in the Rhineland. This made the French angry, so the Americans set up a phone line to Limburg and helped the Weimar Republic. Communications between the Bottleneck Freestate and the rest of the Weimar Republic normalized, though there was still a lot of smuggling. The French were angry at a whole new level, so when Germany missed reparation payment, the French marched in to loot the bottleneck, only to find that all the bottles had been hidden. The German government then ordered a general strike, and because there were no more railway workers supplying the soldiers in the bottleneck, the occupation became a costly endeavor for France, so they had to leave to avoid going bankrupt. After this, a train carrying reparations to Italy was looted, and the French wanted to find out who did it, so they interrogated all people capable of this to no avail. Angry, they then exiled those people to non-occupied Germany. But this only hurt the French, because without those engineers, there was no one to work on the railroads, and you know the story by now. In retaliation, the French occupied the Rhineland, dissolved the Free State, and the story ends here.